when we speak about community, what really fascinates me here is the fact that it's not a dialogue. It's like a lot of multiple dialogues between different players. To me, it's like about polylog. So when people and the company and everyone, they just talk to each other, and these conversations actually lead to something new.
Welcome to the Community Unlocked podcast hosted by Helena and Olena, where we have in-depth conversations with top-tier community leaders and growth experts. Our goal is to provide you with concrete and actionable advice to help you learn about building, launching, and growing your community. Today, our guest is Yana Belova. Yana is a community builder and global advisor assisting IT companies worldwide, from pre-seed tech startups to giants like Canva, Miro, and Google. Yana lives in Sydney and is currently working on her second book, which is also her first in English, focusing on community building for tech founders. Yana, hi, how are you doing? Thanks so much for coming to our podcast today.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Super excited to learn from you today. So, without further ado, I have a question for you. What was your journey into community building like?
I think that it started like 13 years ago, and it was in Russia when we decided to launch Russian Yelp. You probably know Yelp.com, which is the platform with user reviews from all around the globe. But Yelp decided not to launch their project in Russia. And one of the opinion was, I'm not quite sure if it's like it was an official opinion, but what I've heard is like they didn't want to launch it in Russia just because they thought that like Russian mentality is all about like negative reviews. Meanwhile, they learn from the like positive reviews, and they work with business owners, right? So they didn't want it to launch in Russia, but we decided like why not? And that was a beautiful moment when we were young and pretty audacious, and we decided, okay, let's start from Novosibirsk, where I was born. And yeah, our investor was probably one of the top IT companies those days. It was Tugis, you probably know them. And yeah, they just offered us to start and to see how things would go probably. And 6 years after, we had communities in 92 cities in Russia. We had I think 2.5 million reviews, and the average rate among these reviews was 3.75, which is more than the ones for Yelp. So it was for me, it was all about learning how you can build the experience and lead people from the idea like what they think they should do to the idea what they actually can do if you like redesign the circumstances. Because first of all, people really wanted to complain, and they wrote about all these negative reviews about like I didn't like this restaurant and like all this stuff like this. But after that, we just try to redesign the experience by talking about good thing that you like noticed. And also it was really important to build the mission around the idea that if you recommend a lot, you help business owners grow. If you recommend a lot, you help other people to find the right place. If you're always negative and you leave negative reviews, it means like, okay, who are you gonna help? Yeah, that, and it was really important for me. Like it was the first time when I realized that you really can redesign the existing behavior pattern with the community. So yeah, it was the very beginning of the journey.
After Yelp, what was the next chapter for you?
Yeah, after Russian Yelp, so-called Russian Yelp, but we called it the Flamp actually. So it was a different name because it wasn't like a franchise or whatever partnership. So my family and I, we moved to Australia, and it was a time to start from scratch in like new circumstances. So I was thinking, first of all, what I did after my maternity leave ended, it was like I think my second year in Australia, just when pandemic started, I believe. So I launched an agency working with my big corporate client from Russia. I was just thinking about, I don't want to lose these connections. I already have them, so I wanted to keep working with them, but it was, a terrible experience in terms of time zones. You understand, like working with Moscow from Sydney, it's sort of like, I don't know, that's crazy. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a sustainable scheme of work. And then when it was the pandemic and everyone was just locked at home, a really interesting moment happened in my life, because yeah, I used to follow a guy from Google who invented YouTube mobile, and he was pretty famous. It's a Russian speaking guy, Andrei Doronishev. And once he posted a really interesting thought that, ideas are not that important, like as an opportunity to build and to make these ideas come to life. So he told that probably you should share your idea better than keep it in secret, because if you share this idea and you find the right person to like support your idea, you probably make it happen quickly. Then you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna keep this in secret, you're gonna think that I can do this on my own. And this thought, it really clicked with me, because I just thought that, okay, that's so right. So I decided immediately post a comment under his post. Like I shared my idea, and my idea was to create an online co-working space where people with their ideas, with their skills, with their different types of experience, they can help each other. They can just come together, share their ideas, and they can build something together. And
Mm-hmm.
I shared this idea, and I told, like, I think I would love to build this community one day.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? He just called me. He direct messaged me, and he asked me, like, what is your phone number? I want to call you. I like your idea, actually. And to me, it was like, the guy from Silicon Valley, super popular, and like he's an executive in Google. To me, it was um, like, is it even true? Okay, so I shared my
Mm-hmm.
number, and he called me immediately, and he told me, like, I love your idea, and I love how you described it, so why not to build this together? And we started building the thing that we after that called mesto. Mesto is a Russian word for place, so it was the place where people meet each other and create something together.
Yeah, yeah, I still remember. I know the story that how fast it grew. Can you
Yeah.
maybe tell us a little bit more how it was in the beginning? Because this is such a great example of not-for-profit community with like such a great people inside.
Yeah, to me it was, mind-blowing experience, just because when we decided to design this community, we were thinking more about the avatars of people. We wanted a particular type of people being part of this community. That's why we started from, designing our core values, our mission. So it all started from, Google Docs, where myself, Andrei, our co-founder Nikolai Davidov, and other people from different companies that who were invited to be our, advisory board. I think, like, in total we had a lot of, like, probably 15 or 17 people helping us to build Master from scratch. And then we just, we discussed different options, like, this is an important core value, no, let's cross it out, let's think about different one. And for, I think, the first 2 or 3 weeks, it was all about discussing core values, ideas, again and again. And probably it was my first time when we started from defining this really sharp. Before that, it was always like, let's start and then we will see. But here in
Mm-hmm.
Nest, it was all different. So when we defined what type of person we want to see, we decided like that probably our, like, core avatar for Nesta is the one who wants to help, and the one who is really like fine to ask for help. So the people who are happy to exchange whatever they have, and they feel like together we grow bigger and we can go a longer journey. So when we started application process, and we said, like, everyone who wants to join Mesta, it's still a private group, but if you want to join, you can like fill out your application form and send it to us. I think we had more than 30,000 applications, like in a couple of days. And it was
Yeah.
like a great success because we wanted to go through them. And then it was like 40,000 applications. And then it was like 50,000 applications. And
Yeah.
it was impossible to like you manage it manually. This is when I hired a lot of volunteers to help us. And I told them like, okay, we cannot do this manually, but here are our guidelines. Here is our like an avatar of someone who we want to see at Mesto. So it was really easy to navigate our volunteers through the whole process because when they understood like what type of person we want to have in this community, it was much easier. And then we like sort of like distilled a group of people who actually joined to the core community, and it was 25,000 people by the end
Yeah.
of the day.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. I know you had this enormous number of applications and you basically went through all of them in like a couple of weeks with like group of volunteers, which is like just crazy story. Like if I'm thinking about the product community, it's never happened. Like it's not that, like it's basically like not for profit. If you really know your persona and you have these people willing to join to help each other, you
Yeah.
just, this is just totally another story. Yeah, and I really like how you described how you built from scratch, starting from values and persona in mind. It really reminds me how you usually build products. So you need to
Yeah.
understand clearly what is your ICP. And then starting
Mm-hmm.
from here, everything is becoming much easier for you because you
Yeah.
can really understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Who do you
Fantastic.
build it for, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And when you think about it, it's really easier because without this clear explanation and clear statement, I think we probably couldn't move forward just because, like, imagine how you scale the volunteer team. Some of people they drop off just because of different circumstances. Some of them need to go to work, and some of them have kids, and they can simply cannot volunteer as much as you want them to volunteer. So you must be really clear about standards, about how and what we want to be done. Otherwise, in this, like recurrent flow of coming and dropping off volunteers, you cannot navigate the
Hmm.
whole process. So yeah, it was really important to build operations around this
Yeah.
community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very interesting story. And you mentioned something that I wrote down and I wanted to ask you to build upon. So you mentioned that you kind of brought people together, and your idea was that we can grow bigger together and then define, I think you said, the future or like the further development together. It really is kind of the core of a community, right? We're building together, we're growing
Yeah.
together, we're defining what the future will be together. So I would love to ask you to elaborate a bit about what you think community is and what the difference is between community and audience, because I think there still is this big kind of
Conversation around it.
conversation. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Mm-hmm. I like your question. Actually, yeah, I understand that the mission of Master probably sounds pretty generic, right? So let's go together to build something meaningful for the future. Yeah, that's like for any community in the world. But probably the success of Master was just because it reflected what most of the people actually wanted to do and wanted to have in their lives. And this is what leads us to the idea of community, because when we think about like working with your audience, communicating with different types of audiences, and communicating within a community, I think the difference is in type of the dialogue you build. Because when you work with your audience in some kind of like on socials, in some kind of like social media group, it's always about a dialogue between yourself or your brand and other people there. So you build this dialogue, and it's kind of like it's kind of normal for you to share a new piece of content and to get some feedback. This is what most of the bloggers do. This is what most of the brands do. So they share a piece of content, then they receive feedback, then they reply to this feedback, and this is like dialogue, like ping pong, right? But when we speak about community, what really fascinates me here is the fact that it's not a dialogue. It's like a lot of multiple dialogues between different players, between different counterparts. To me, it's like about polylog. So when people and the company and everyone, they just talk to each other, and these conversations actually lead to something new. And you, as a community builder or as a brand, you can build and design such sort of an environment that empowers other people to lead these meaningful conversations that gonna then be turned into some actions, and then these actions gonna be turned into some kind of new reality that all of these people have in mind. This is why I think it's so important to have this picture, because if this picture is common for everyone, you have like 25,000 of people or like 42,000 of people, that's a lot. But if they
Mhm.
all have the same picture in mind, their conversation and their interactions can lead to this picture to just come true, to happen, because they all can imagine this in details, and they all can bring their best talents and skills to the table. So all together, they co-create this new reality.
That sounds so inspiring. I was like, oh my God, it's kind of a motto. And then all together we come and we create this new reality. But it makes perfect sense. And that's what you said from the beginning about you spending a few weeks defining what it means for you and really putting a lot of effort and thought into it. That just makes so much sense for any kind of project, right? But I think
Yeah,
often we rush and overlook this tremendously important step.
I think so. But I also think that there should be sort of a balance between like thinking and overthinking. Just,
Absolutely.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Just because, yeah, if you start just thinking it and defining this picture, you can be trapped into a situation where you already defined everything, and then your community comes to you and they have a different picture in mind. This is what can also happen with a community manager, and I experienced that. When sometimes you have a perfect picture, you come with this picture, many people come to you, but when you start communicating with them, you just realize you have different pictures actually. So you use the same words but describing different things, and they have different values. So in this case, when it happens to me, I think it was twice in my life in like smaller size communities, I just try to, to split my community into a couple of groups. Some groups go their way, some groups go my way, and it's fine. It's totally fine to let people go and build something on their own if they want to. So it's all about freedom to me.
I want to make a little bit shift into the next experience you have, which is tightly connected with not-for-profit community building and also product community building. So I think this is very unique that you have both experiences. And I'm very keen to know the difference in product community building and not-for-profit. Maybe like building, engaging.
Let me think about it from different perspectives, because I think that I had a couple of like big product community, I mean product based around
Product.
product communities, and at the same time a couple of really big nonprofit communities like the one that we discussed before and the one for Canva. I'm actually at the moment I'm leading the nonprofit community vertical for Canva, and this is a completely different experience, right? But when I think about the maybe the biggest difference between these types of communities, I think that in terms of like nonprofit communities, we can always see that they more, I'm sorry for defining this that sharp, but they more survive than they work.
Mhm.
So it's more about a really harsh experience. It's more about like surviving, always fundraising, trying to find more money. It's always about like finding the way to optimize money and time and costs and processes, just
Mhm.
because most of the communities, like most of the nonprofits in my communities, they're not the size of like WWF Foundation, right?
Mhm.
Or TED or
Mhm.
Toastmasters, right? They're
Mhm.
pretty big, but most of them are really small size PTAs or
Mhm.
rescue shelters. So it's a
Mhm.
bit different when you work with product communities. People consider this as their main work, their main job. So they're
Mhm.
happy to invest some time into these communities, and they're pretty demanding in terms of like, okay, that's my job. That's why it's really important for me to have some outcome from these communications. But it's
Mhm.
fine not to have an outcome for some time. I just like I can have fun. I can meet new people. I can build connections. Like it's fun when I just am the part of this community. But when we speak about nonprofits, it's never about fun. If they don't see the idea, like why we are here, if they don't see the immediate outcome, they'd better not waste their time in this community. That's the same about Mister, the same about nonprofits, community for Canva. They are pretty, it's really easy for them to feel um, disappointed. So that's
Mhm.
why you should your bar, the bar of the expectations is already raised pretty high, and you should understand that they served their mission, and you should serve them. It's different. Yeah, it's different. Product communities are more about like the product, right? How you use it. It's business. It's different. So that's the atmosphere is different. It's not about like surviving or putting everything you have on like towards the mission. There is much more fun in product-based communities.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely a massive difference that I personally haven't had experience and didn't realize. It's very interesting.
But
Yeah.
that's why if there's really so, they're really so demanding and they want so much from you, that's why it's really important to be that kind of personality that immediately like reflects their expectations. Like for example, when I started working with nonprofits, I realized that my kind of personality when I used to work with, with product communities, with creators communities, should be like I just should change my personality to
Mhm.
meet their expectations. So when I work with like product business communities, creators communities, I'm like now with you. I talk really like energetically, and I'm like happy to discuss different problems. Let's solve them quickly. But when I'm with nonprofits, I try to like just to come with the key ideas. I speak
Mm,
much less than I normally do, and I
mm,
speak with full respect towards
Mhm.
they do. And I try to go deep into what they experience to make
Mhm.
sure I'm fully respectful. Because there are different types of problem, like animal shelter, like kids, poverty, hunger. So you should, or like war, you should speak
Mhm.
with the full respect. This is what is
Mhm.
really important.
the difference, of course, is quite obvious here. And how do you build these connections in the nonprofit field? Because it seems like, it's a very different dynamic than what we, for
Mhm.
example, have experienced. I'd really love to hear
Yeah, it's a
what you
different
think.
it's a different personality, I can say so as well. That's why based on the personality you can build the right dynamic for you. So you can define the experience that makes them do whatever you think they should do in this community towards the mission, but at the same time you should consider their personalities. They are just different. So for example, in nonprofits community, people are more tend to be helpful. They're really helpful because they're ready to help. They already understand that people can go really far to help each other. That's why if someone asks for help and they understand that it's just not an like a casual ask, that someone really needs their help, they go above and beyond to help. That's why when you like create this dynamic in the community, you always explain your why
Mhm.
behind every action. You explain your why. For product community, it's fine, just do things for fun sometimes, maybe like 20%, but it's fine
Mhm.
to not to
Mhm.
explain why you organize this meetup or whatever. Just like you can say just networking or just spending time together, it's
Mhm.
fine, this. So maybe people expect this from you. But if I come to my nonprofit group and say like, let's gather just for fun, have some drinks, no one will pop up
Mm,
in the bar. Just literally
Mhm.
no one. Even if I say like we pay for everything, come, they
mhm,
won't come because like no, my time is priceless. But if you want them to communicate and to interact, you should understand the why behind of your community. For example, like in Canva experience, we realized that we built this community to make nonprofits help each other. That's the only
Mhm.
thing that is important in this community. So I don't promote any type of Canva features or whatever. It's not about that. All I do is I teach them how to use Canva the best way to optimize their process, their, I don't know, prices, not to hire a designer, what you can do
Mhm.
yourself. It's really easy. So I try to like optimize their processes. And at the same time, I always give them stage to make sure they can share their experiences. Like, for example, like recently, one of the nonprofits, they just popped up in the group and told us like, okay, we designed a really beautiful fundraising deck and it was really successful. Here's a template. If you are from the same industry or from the same country, probably you're gonna love this, or you can redesign it for you. I'm happy to help you because it really helped us to have, to raise the money we wanted to raise. And other people
Mhm.
started talking about this because like, oh, okay, that's my industry as well, I want to get this, and like how it was. And I see this as like they really become stronger together. And if you
Mhm.
show them how it works, they started investing their time into this group because they understand one day I will help you, the next day
Mhm.
you're going to help me.
I think Canva community is like the benchmark of like for many communities what we should achieve. And Canva for nonprofits, I think this is like even another level of community. It feels like you don't have much pressure to promote your product in the community. So you have this flexibility coming, I assume, from leadership
Yeah.
that we are for people, we are not like this is not a marketing channel. Don't
Yeah.
promote our product. Can you tell a little bit more for the people probably who'd like to build product communities? What kind of mistakes they should avoid and they are starting building community and how the best looks like? Yeah.
It's a beautiful question because, a lot of beautiful experiences, they look really like even more beautiful from an outsider perspective. But we all understand that there is nothing perfect in this world. And when you come and really like roll your sleeves and start doing things, you realize there are so many obstacles in any type of community. But if we speak about the like most common mistakes, I would go maybe from my experience, and I can say that the biggest mistake is to start working with people with different values from yours. Because, for example, you mentioned the leadership in Canva, it's 100% that our core values are the same. So that's why I feel this trust. And I know that I take the full ownership on the community I build, and no one will come and say like, let's start promoting Canva products every single day in this community. No, because everyone understands like I feel this on my fingertips, and like if someone wants to do something with this community, they probably come to me, and we're probably gonna brainstorm what is the best way to do this. But no one gonna like just come and interrupt the flow. No, 100% no. That's why it's really important to work with the right people. I had one experience, really like not the best one in my life, when I joined really big company, just thinking that such a big brand is probably built by people who are just, amazing, who have the like an incredible experience, but they were absolutely not about community building. They were beautiful in building products, not about building communities. And when I joined them, I just realized like, no, there's nothing in common between us. And yeah, I was lucky to leave the company like in 3 months, I can say so, because I just realized that I wake up every single day and I just don't want to go there. I just don't want to open my laptop. That's not
Mhm.
how things should work, right? Yeah, so the first one, to work with the right people. The second one is to define this, picture of the future that you want to share with your community. Because if you understand your community, you understand their like core beliefs and core fears as well, you can build whatever you actually believe in together. And I've heard that, this kind of an opinion that you should be also your avatar. So you should be the same kind of person with your community. But I can say that there are some cases where you can totally be a different type of person. You just respect this idea, and you
Mhm.
can support, and you can just do whatever helps these people to achieve their goals, but it's probably not your mission and not your goal. It's fine. If you're a good community manager, you can simply help them to build this dynamic, to build this, environment where they can do their best and collaborate together. And the third one is, the role of a community manager should be just right to design this environment, but at the same time not to define this environment. So it's really important, it's like, it sounds like a really slight and that like a really small difference, but this difference is like a key one. When we speak about community building, and you probably understand this from your experience as well, when you build your community, you should leave enough space for others to be creators.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're going to be the one who creates everything and makes other people work for you. No one wants to work with no money for someone else's idea. No.
Mhm.
Mm-mm. Even
Mm-hmm.
volunteers, they work not because they just want to work for you. They work for themselves. They want to co-create this. And that's why many volunteer communities, they just simply, they simply stop to exist because people there, they felt like they're employees, but not co-creators and co-owners. That's why your role as a community manager to invite people co-own this idea, but not to be their manager 100%. No.
I always advocate for building for and with the community, because that's really when this magic happens, and when people feel the sense of ownership and
Yeah.
that their words and their opinions matter. And that's what you really want. It's not collecting a bunch of people to work for you for free, of course. That's not what
Yeah,
none of us want.
absolutely.
Thinking about the future,
Mm-hmm.
where do you see the community industry, I guess we can call community industry,
Yep.
going, and what the future, what the trends are for this industry?
And I will add maybe AI, because everybody is speaking about AI.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I totally get it. And I think AI going to play a big role there. I see three trends, and it's really interesting for me to hear what do you think about it, because I understand that like from your perspective, you're probably going to see like different trends in Europe, right? Because yeah, this planet is huge, and I can say that yeah, community building is different in different parts of the world. But three trends that I can see and I can definitely define for Asia Pacific, the US, and probably partly for Europe as well. The first one is about distinguishing communities and community programs. Because before that, it was all about, like, let's call everything community, right? Like, let's call affiliate programs community. Let's
Mhm.
call all the extrinsic motivation programs community. And it was a big buzzword for the entire world. Everyone, like, let's call my Facebook group a community. Let's go everything community. And like every blogger has their community. No, that's not that. And at the moment, I'm happy to see that the world understands it. And the value of non-community initiatives grows, which is really important because before that, it was, an opinion that communities may be the best that you can have. And if it's not a community, you should aim to build a community. But like, honestly, I think that sometimes it's really fine to admit that you don't need a community. You build a program with clear contract with some people that, for example, you do this, I do that. We can pay you, and it's fine if you promote our brand or you teach people how to use our brand or our product. It's fine. And we don't call it a community anymore. So I think this trend is growing at the moment, and people really want to think, okay, what I actually build, a community or a program or an initiative or like a group. And it's really important because the savior we become, the better groups we build actually. So the faster we go towards our goals. The second one is all about AI. And about, I think that AI is probably the part of this trend, but not the most important part. It's all about defining the shared experiences. Because when we started doing this, like technology and platforms, different platforms for community building, they also develop. And what we actually try to do, we try to build the experience which is really similar to a, a real life one, right? So what we want to do is like we try to create the feeling that you're not sitting with your mobile phone, like just tapping a message, but you're sitting in one room with a lot of people from different places. And when I recently found a course about metaverse at Coursera. And it was a really interesting experience to me to learn, because I just realized that the future is about to come. And probably one day we're going to just sit in one room as we are all here with our avatars talking, sitting at the one table, and probably like we all together could make this podcast sitting like all together as well, with a like absolutely natural feeling that we are in one room. And it's really gonna help community building, because community building, it's not only to to communicate towards the picture you have. It's also about having experience that you share. It's about emotional attachment to people that you work together, collaborate together, that you have conversations with. So they should become part of your life and your experience. And to make it smoother, you should create this experience. And I believe like AI, metaverse, and sort of things like all the technology is going to work to probably like like merge a real life experience with virtual experience closer and closer. What do you think?
It's interesting what you said about metaverse, because Web3 is all about community, isn't it? And
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
values of the values of the Web3 space, which I'm absolutely not a pro in, I just know some things about it. It's something that we community professionals can learn from. And it doesn't mean that it's amazingly working there, but the core values, the distribution of profit, that's what we want to create too, because we want our community members, whoever volunteers, whoever is building together with us, to benefit.
Yeah.
And the values there, I can really connect to that. And I think it's really the future too.
Yeah, I totally agree. And when I think about this, I was born in 1988, when there was like no laptops, no mobile phones, no internet at all. And like it still was a community power. We still had communities, like in real life communities, where people help each other. The blue zones
Mhm.
existed, right? So people lived in tribes, and it was like absolutely normally and fine. What we experience now is, I think, the way how we adjust to the existing technologies, trying to just extend our human experience and like just implement it into the virtual space. And it's really interesting to see like what's going to happen next. Should we feel that there is no difference between virtual space and real life? I don't think so. Probably that, yeah, probably there's still the difference, but it's going to be probably different. And this is what going to define us as community managers and our jobs and what we're going to do and what our tribes going to look like in the future. What I think is important, like to me, after this course about metaverse, what I decided myself, I thought that like, okay, you see that things evolve pretty quickly. And as a good manager, you should just learn and keep evolving with things that happen in life. So just keep evolving, just try to keep your finger on the pulse and go with it.
Yeah,
And
I
the third
agree.
one, yeah, the third one. Remember, we
Yeah.
talked,
Yeah.
Hmm.
yeah, we talked about like two trends. There is a third one, which I think is also like pretty important. It's about I think that community building is now democratized. It used to be sort of like a magical skill that probably some people have, but it's really hard to build a community. And like a lot of people tried but didn't succeed in this. But at the moment, what I see that a lot of beautiful communities appear because of the initiative of someone who have never built any communities before. And this is amazing because it means we can decentralize it, and a lot of beautiful initiatives can just appear and grow bigger
Hmm.
without this like a specialist that you should hire. And this is what I really believe in. This is why I
Hmm.
wrote my very first book about community building, and this is why I'm writing the next one to support entrepreneurs and founders in their desire to build a community without probably hiring a community manager or without going too deep into community building, because I believe it's just possible. It's just a natural skill that I want, my daughter to have in the future, that I want like every kid in every school to have, just for the future, because I believe that there potentially could be so many beautiful charity markets, theaters, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, a lot of like just community build initiatives that can happen if everyone gonna really understand what community is about.
Yeah, the third one resonates with me a lot. Also, democratizing building community for founders. This is also what I wanted to add, how I predict the future. I feel that right now there are so many conversations regarding product growth. Everybody
Mm-hmm,
wants to have
mm-hmm,
product
mm-hmm,
growth, but I believe like community is such an essential part of this motion, which is
mm-hmm,
sometimes overlooked in the beginning of the company. Then you build the company as a founder. You are starting
mm-hmm.
from the product, which is very natural. You are starting from the product, but if I look at successful communities right now, I feel that the founders, so like the people who started the company in the beginning of their journey, they
Mm-hmm.
realized the power of community, and they really were the first people starting like this motion with no skills, as you said, just naturally gathering people around the product, usually really passionate people, and
Yeah,
having no metrics attached, just like pure passion, and having like people who think you're building great stuff. And yeah, so I believe in this like a founder led community growth which contribute to your success.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it totally clicks with me as well. Yeah, because I believe that's the future. It's all about future. The community building shouldn't be a special thing that you should learn for years and years, and then you should probably deserve to build your first community. That's really weird to me, because this one, like, I should deserve. This is what I first heard after launching the first book. Many people came to me and they're like, I'm not quite sure if I deserve building communities, if I'm like professional enough to do this. And I'm like, what do you define as like professional enough? And they told me like, I'm learning how to build communities for 5 years now, and I'm still not sure if I'm like sort of allowed to build it. I'm like, it all comes with practice, right? And yeah, it's sometimes you can go through all the existing programs in the world. There are not that many of them actually, right? So you can go through all the existing programs, and like without building your very first community, you will never learn, right?
So true. I, for one, for whoever listens to this and is thinking that they don't deserve, I built my first community without any experience, and it was very natural, and it was all doing by learning, learning by doing, and
Learning by
forget
doing and
learning by
doing by learning.
and doing by learning. It was both. It went both ways, and
Hmm.
it was the way to go. If I tried to do this by going through a million courses, I would have never felt ready.
Yeah,
So I think absolutely everyone, whoever wants to do this, should try, and I'm sure it will be a marvelous experience.
absolutely, absolutely. So many people benefit from it, right? When I think
Mhm.
about this, I think sometimes that we must apply our skills toward the mission. Just because, why I say we must is because this thing probably will never happen if you just think like, I'm not professional enough, and it never
Mhm.
happens. And so many lives can change because you just tried, right? So that's why it's not a question of like how good I am to do this. It's more a question of like how many people gonna benefit if I start.
And on this beautiful note, I'm afraid our conversation has come to an end. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, your learnings, your tips and tricks, so many good things. Thank you.
Thank you
Yes,
so
thank
much
you.
for beautiful questions you ask, and just your approach and the way how we talked about community building. I really appreciate this, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. If our conversation resonated with you, please consider subscribing to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Your ratings and reviews are invaluable in helping us reach more like minded people. You can find all our episodes and learn more about the show at communityunlocked.substack.com. See you in the next episode.